You got a topic? Or are we just going to go?
Going. Kelin, what's going on?
How's it going?
Good. Thoroughly
Good.
annoyed today, so I figured we'd talk about something.
Oh, no. What are you thoroughly annoyed about?
No, just you ever get in that deal where it's like everything freaking just grates on you. That's me right now.
Yeah.
Like, I had I see the world in math, right? Mm-hmm. And so on my way to work, I have 11 traffic lights that I have to get through. And you would think traffic lights are pretty coin flippy. So on a typical day, you get stopped at about half of them.
Yeah.
Today, all freaking 11 of them were red. And I was like, well, at least if you're going to do it, get a perfect score, right?
Yeah.
It was the worst perfect score that you could have freaking gotten. I was like, now I was looking for it, and I bet you I manifested all of those stupid traffic lights getting in my way this morning.
Yeah, because you were probably like, oh, if I just get 2 more, then it's going to be all of them.
Exactly. Now I'm looking, I'm like, drive a little slow, so I'll line that one up. Now I want a perfect score.
Well, you know what I feel like that means, though?
What?
I have started to feel like those mornings especially, it's always when you're trying to get somewhere or you're in a hurry. It's not like when you're just leisurely driving, of course. If somebody gets in front of you and they're going real slow, or you get a bunch of traffic lights, or you hit, you're behind an accident, something. I always tell myself, something is trying to slow me down. I'm not supposed to get to where I'm going that fast.
So you would
yet.
say that shit if you wanted to feel better, but I wanted to be in the moment miserable. Like I was so bought in to the misery of what I was dealing with. Like every old person was on the road driving 5 miles under the speed limit. I'm like, come on. There are people that have places to go. You might not, but you're getting in everybody's freaking way.
Yeah. Oh, is it because of the weather? I mean, with it being so rainy, or people just
it was
scared?
not raining at the time. People were just inconsiderate as a whole.
As a whole. All around you in one day.
All around. And I started noticing it yesterday when I got behind it. And it's especially like people who are working and they're on the clock. Yeah. They have, and they would probably say, I don't want to, get in trouble and lose my job because part of my job is driving. But they all go super slow because they're just freaking raking the clock.
Yeah, they're like, what do I care?
Exactly. But they're in everybody's way when they're trying to do it. And it just drives me crazy. I wish I wasn't always on the go and always had somewhere to be at a certain time. But there are people depending on me to get there at the time I said I was going to be, and your idiot ass is in front of me, so I do care about you getting out. And then those frickers, I freaking hate these people. You're on the freeway, and they're in the left lane, right? And they're going so effing slow where you can't get by them. But then they do get over, and they freaking gun it! They freaking learn where the gas pedal is, and you're like, you freaking moron. You were just trying to get in my way.
I've done that.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, wait a minute. Here's the thing. It's not that I've been in the lane going slow. If I am already going well above the speed limit, I'm not lollygagging, I'm not being slow, I'm not being in your way, I am clearly not only going at least the speed limit, but probably a little more, and you are still on my ass.
Well, let me explain this. There are multiple lanes, and they serve a purpose. Mm-hmm. So the one on this side, your right side, that's for driving. That's for going the speed limit or following the flow of traffic. Yeah. This one is when you're like, oh, I want to go faster than the guy that's in front of me. I'm going to pass them and go up to a speed that's greater than that car and then get in front of them.
Yeah.
It's not to sit there and create an impassable roadblock. Just because, okay, in your case, if you want to go the speed that you're going, cool. Get the hell over in the right lane. Get out of my way.
Let people speed by you. If we're going to get a ticket, we're going to get a ticket, but let us just go.
Yeah, and if you speed up 10 miles an hour, ahead of the flow of traffic to get in front of that person, cool. But don't freaking hang out in that freaking lane. Yeah. Pisses me off.
I can't stand the extremely slow turners. Like they're turning into a parking lot or a driveway or down a side street or something. And it's like they almost have to come to a complete stop, turn the wheel, start the turn. I'm like, turn already! Get out of the freaking way!
It happens so often. I have a dismissive phrase that I use. Okay? Yeah. And it makes me laugh, so it kind of pulls me out of the moment. But when I see someone do those little half a mile an hour turns, I say, wow, you almost rolled it. And it makes me feel better because I'm totally mocking people. They're like, I mean, what are you protecting yourself from? Do you think if you turn too sharp that something's going to fall off? Do you think
you're going to hit a curb or a corner?
No, be reasonable, but come on, you don't have to come to a complete stop. Yeah. So that inconsideration and being other people's way, even if you're like retired and got nothing to do, like get off the road if you don't know how to drive.
Yeah, I'll usually
100%.
yell, especially if it clearly appears to be an older person. I'll usually yell, "It's time to take the keys."
Yes, right. And another thing is people
We're
who
terrible.
buy vehicles that are bigger than their ability to drive.
Yes.
And so you want to buy a Navigator, or you want to buy a big pickup truck, but then you're anxious about it because you can't control it. Get a freaking Prius. This is the first time I'll ever recommend a Prius.
Get a
Get a
Prius.
smart car. Maybe it's on your level.
Yeah.
And you need to buy with how you can drive. Driving a 35-foot motorhome. Okay. When they first handed me the keys to this thing, I was like, how in the hell do you not have to have some kind of special permit to drive this thing?
Yeah,
It
really.
is so big and hard to drive that it took me a good month to really get a good handle on driving. And I'm thinking, you let me on the road with this thing?
You just gave it to me.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But it takes, like when you're on the freeway, it weighs so much that when you're going up a hill, you almost have to juice it 15 miles over the speed limit to make it up the side of the hill. So when you have these little idiot cars that have no, they have no worry about that, and they steal your momentum, and then you got to hit like the furthest right lane, gun it, and go like 20 miles an hour to get up the other side because they stole all of your freaking momentum.
Oh yeah, cars can be pretty ballsy when they're around larger vehicles. And it's like they don't even realize, hey, do you think this person driving this enormous truck or RV or something might have an issue or might need some room here? I have seen so many times cars cut off semi-trucks. And I'm like, how fast do you think they can stop? That you are willing to be like, they'll stop. I got this. And go right in front of a truck that's like barreling, that's going to need several feet to slow down.
They all need to watch the stopping distance of what it takes a motorhome and a semi. So I leave these enormous gaps between the people that are in front of me, because if I have to hit the brakes, then I need a lot of distance.
Yeah.
And then when that large gap is inviting to the cars to cut you off and fill that gap. So whenever we're in traffic, I'm trying to leave distance and they're trying to fill in that gap. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I finally at a certain point give up. I'm like, if I got to stop, you're going to turn into a freaking accordion, and it's not going to be my fault. So I put a little camera in the front window that gives me forward-looking coverage, and that way, if anything ever happened, I'm gonna be like, look at this dickhead.
That's a good idea. Yeah, because they cut you off all the time. I used to live down south, and you couldn't pay me to drive near Atlanta. They don't even care how close they are. I mean, if they want to get in your lane, like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And then they look at you like you did something wrong. Or they'll flip you off. Like, you're the psycho that literally just almost hit me, and I'm just supposed to, they'll stop. Oh, they'll stop. You know what else I hate?
What's that?
And I have a really crude phrase. The people that buy the big, loud trucks.
It's a black smoke that comes out.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love
it's
that.
always some young guy douchebag, and they try to pull out, and it's like,
oh yeah.
And their tires are so high,
You
they
know
have
why
to
I
climb
love
in.
those? Because of how much it pisses people off.
Oh my God.
If it makes all those people mad, the better. I hope they put smoke in there that actually kills things as it's going down. So you'd have like a stream of dead grass on the right side of it as it's blowing smoke.
You know what I yell at those vehicles?
Huh.
I say, sorry about your small penis. Because that's clearly them compensating.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's fun. It really is.
But I mean, in all seriousness, start looking at it when you're having that day that it is like, everyone is in my way. Every light is red. Why is this taking so long? I should be there by now. I always tell myself the universe is slowing me down on purpose. Let them. Maybe had I gotten there, I would have been in an accident. Maybe I would have been killed. Maybe something would have run out in front of me. Whatever. The universe is holding you back for a reason. Like, hold on. Okay, now go. To save your life, maybe you never know.
Yeah. When I'm on autopilot in my Tesla, my anxiety goes way down because I don't care anymore about it. I look at the GPS when I'm going to get there. I put it on autopilot, and I mentally go somewhere else. And the car just sits there sometimes, and I'm like, every once in a while I'll pay attention. I'm like, if I were driving right now, I would have scooted around these 5 cars and, been in a drag race down this freeway.
Yeah.
And when it's doing it, it kind of moseys a little bit. It kind of takes its time, and I'm thinking, And I don't even care. Like, I'm still going to get there at the same time. I'm not going to shave 42 seconds off of this one for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to notice at the end of the day. So it kind of puts me in check a little bit of how much energy I put into getting somewhere on at a certain point. And it really wouldn't have mattered all that much. But then think about how pissed off you are at the end of the day.
And do you get mad too when you do have that morning that you are just crazed and you're trying to get somewhere on time because you're like, I told them it would be this time. I'm going to be there at this time. And you like 2 wheels get in there and you race in just to sit and have to wait on the other people.
Oh, that pisses me off.
And nobody else cared. Nobody else put that stress in it. I swear that's like my daily life of in the morning, getting ready, rushing out the door, taking care of everything, getting to work, yelling at cars because you respect the time you said you would be there. And then when you do and nobody else did, you're like, why did I just give myself an aneurysm to get here? For no reason?
Honestly, though, because the environments are taking that consideration and just wringing it out of everyone, that's going to be the fall of our society, because it's one of those things where if it's the minority of people that are doing the bad thing, but the majority adhere to the principles of consideration, then it's all good. Then we ostracize the people that are doing bad behavior, and then we're rewarding the people that do good behavior. Once that reverses and it's only the minority, then think about the time where like there's an advantage in not having consideration. Think about how much more relaxed you would be.
Yeah.
And now we have all inconsiderate people, and theft, killing, all of those things come off the table, because when it's just common practice to do all those things, there's nothing to stop you from doing it. That's when we come unglued.
Yeah. And you had mentioned kind of letting your car go on autopilot and just sort of zoning out and getting there. What a crazy phenomenon, though, when you don't purposely, I guess, consciously make that choice. But have you ever just been driving and all of a sudden you're where you're going and you never thought about how to get there? How do we even do that? I mean, I know people say like, oh, it's muscle memory or you've done it so many times, but that really freaks me out when I get somewhere and realize I was not here. I was not in this car for how long? And clearly I saw stop signs or stoplights or cars and turns. Don't remember any of them. What even causes that, I wonder?
So subconscious brain is amazing. And you can do a lot of things on autopilot, the version of it that's already built into us. If you've rehearsed it and practiced it and done it 1,000 times, your subconscious brain knows what to do. All it needs is the sensory inputs to be able to make those decisions. You don't have to push it through your conscious brain in order to decide those things. I've done the opposite sometimes, where my brain will just get an autopilot and drive me to work when it's a Saturday, because I'm so used to going into that same thing that's happening there. I use a lot of that when, morning routines and whatever. If I stay in that lane, I can go through most of my day and be working my creativity and my emotion in places where I'm discovering and creating, rather than where's my keys today and where's, what am I packing in my lunch and all that kind of stuff. It's actually a lot better to go on autopilot on some of those routines.
Except here's where my paranoia comes in.
Okay.
I mean, I've even seen my cell phone will tell me where I'm going when I get in the car. It'll say so many minutes to whatever, because I do it all the time. And I was like, oh my God, even my technology knows where I'm going right now. It's all the time. And then you hear things like, you should take different ways home because who's watching you? Who's following you? What are the downsides of having such a routine that never, changes? Something that could come from that. What could be bad? Like how it could, like you said, you might automatically go somewhere when you were supposed to go,
Well, we have this illusion that we're unique, and we're really not. Human beings are so predictable in what they'll do. And we give away so much information publicly, digital, to people and whatever, that it wouldn't be hard. Like if I was a serial killer, like it would be the easiest job on the planet. I mean, it really would. You could get away with murdering people pretty easily. And, like when Amazon starts shipping paper towels closer to you without you doing anything, and eventually paper towels just show up when you need it, you're like, where was that magic that made that happen? Well, it's because you looked at the data, you see how often you do something, you do that regiment so often, and then you can make pretty good guesses about what people are going to do just based on the history. All it takes is enough data about what you've historically done to predict the probability of something happening in the future. So that's the benefit, is on the things that don't really matter. It's terribly convenient to have computers make decisions for you. Now we have this we have this desire to feel like this is free will and we're just doing our thing and this was in the spur of the moment, but it's really not.
Yeah.
So the downside is the people who have access to that information and can make you predictable will scare the shit out of you with how accurate they could be about what you're going to do and what your intentions are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at advertisers and advertising and things that they can put anywhere based off of what they know about you. People that have never met you, that don't know really who you are, but they know enough about you to influence you, and they know what you're going to do and what they can make you do. And you're totally in the dark. You don't even realize it's happening to you and you're being controlled. That's freaky.
But also very good. It'll be very good in the end.
Really?
It will be very good in the end.
How so?
Because people are so stupid, right? They're bad decision makers. They're total emotional.
Yeah.
And if you can have computers be able to do what they need, like if your car, with the example of cars having computers in it, and when something needs done, it can schedule the appointments and eventually go off and do it. So now if your car needs tires, rather than human beings not getting tires when they need, it just orders its own tires and wanders to the tire place. And then you see on a bill that you receive tires. They're like, I want to decide that stuff. And we're like, no, your car should pretty much decide when you actually
really
need
don't.
something.
How weird. Then we're just going to basically be zombies, just walking around.
We kind of already are. I'd say it's an illusion, because if you take human being A and human being B and take an inventory of what they do, what they think, what they feel, right? It's all the freaking same. It's just the illusion that it's all different. It's really not.
We're all just the same people. We might look different, and everybody
If you can take half the population that you think causes the most amount of problems and just put them in a pod and simulate what they do on a regular basis to keep us away from their behaviors and decision making, the world would be a better place.
How would we do that, I wonder? Who gets to make that decision?
Computers.
You're in the pod.
Computers decide that they take your net gain, like what you're producing and putting into society, and when it's not more than what you're consuming, you're a drag on society, and we put you in the pod when you're a drag on the society.
Oh.
At least we can make something of you. Maybe use a battery like in the Matrix. Or put you on a treadmill and make your body walk or something like that. Something like that. I mean, there's got to be a good function when someone's a drag on society to make them not a drag on society. Because they're not going to decide it, right? They're not going to come to the conclusion and say, you know what? I take more than I give. I'm going to change my world right now.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a good topic. I'm pissed off, so I might as well
Let's keep it going.
Oh, what was I going to say now? I interrupted myself.
Oh, that probably pisses you off more,
it pisses
doesn't
me
it?
off. Why can't I have an AI to say, Joe?
Drags on society. Drag on society. Make them useful.
Okay. So I had these battles back in the mid-2000s about the secularists who were trying to shed religion from our everyday life. And they insisted that there is secular humanism that would allow secularists to come to moral, instincts, even if they didn't have any kind of religious foundation.
Like they're just inherently good.
Right. We would discover that. Just go be good. You take religion away, and now you don't have the heavy hand of controlling factors, and people would just decide to be good. So every time society presents with these secularism where I was called a slippery slopist for saying, hey, if you do this, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and in the end, this is what's going to happen. And they're like, oh, that's not going to happen. So when it starts happening, I feel an obligation to say, how's that secularism working out for you?
Yeah, I told you so.
Oh, so if you told me that it was going to happen naturally and it's not, now what controls do you have to get those bottom 50% of people who are just terrible people to come to some kind of morality conclusion? Because it's not happening, and you were freaking wrong, and you destroyed an institution that had its downside, but it also had great upside on those controls. So now what are you going to do? You destroyed the machine, right?
Yeah.
And now what new machine are you going to put in place of it?
So, I've always sort of told myself that deep down, I think people are mostly good, and you have bad people or good people that do bad things. But as a whole, humans in general are mostly good and caring. You would be like, nope, not true. They only become good because of things like teachings and morality and things that are put in place in front of them and things they are taught.
Well, I refer to them as pressures, any pressures that make something
Like social
likely
pressures.
or, well, not even social pressures. You can take any pressure. So we'll say most people will not enter your house unless you've invited them in, right? Let's say people are good. They know that they don't want people entering their house. So we create a pressure called a lock, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't say that everybody's so good, so they're not going to come in anyway. We create a pressure that takes, you have the people who will do it even if you have a lock. You have the people that once they get to the lock, they're going to change their mind and not try to enter your house. And the people who would never do that anyhow. Well, you have to almost, the lock's not going to save you from the really dregs, the real bottom, but the middle part, they are, right?
Yeah.
It's not an impenetrable thing, but it's enough of a pressure to keep honest people a little honest. So if you focus on, don't worry about the part where the good people that you know exist already. Worry about those middle part who are going to make some bad decisions in there. And if there's no pressures to stop, if there's nothing coming in between them and an impulse, they're going to take it, right? And then you're going to have a majority of the people. You got the really bad people, and then you've got the middle people who just need some pressures to keep them in honest discipline. And that's where religion hit. Wasn't the people who are going to be good anyway. It's the people in the middle that just need a little nudge, a little pressure to keep being good, because here's a little carrot or a little reason out there that we're going to have you believe in, have you subscribe to, and it's just enough, not absolute. It's not going to keep all those people on it, but it's enough pressure to maybe skew it in one direction.
Which group do you think's larger?
Bad to good?
Yeah.
The bad is getting bigger every day, and I think that I think if people can know or think they can get away with something, they will. They don't have a compass that will hold them to a principle unless there's a pressure on it. And there's more and more of those.
What do you think's making it grow? The bad people are getting more every day. Why?
They're emboldened because they see other people that are getting advantage from being bad. There is no legal, social, relational, or spiritual pressures there's no downside to it. So whenever there is no downside, you are by default going to get more of those people. So if you want to create more people, keep making it more advantageous to do the wrong thing and more of a sacrifice or a martyrdom to do the good thing. And you're going to get more of them. I mean, it's math.
Yeah. And I feel like there are some situations too, where the two of the sides, the good and the bad, are almost then pinned against each other to where they think they are good and bad. You know what I mean? Like the bad now thinks they are the good and the good is bad. You're trying to be controlling. You're trying to, make us all the same when we should celebrate differences or whatever it is. Then they kind of go head to head.
So, and it's the fallacy, like in a more sophisticated, more intelligent society, it's assumed that we're going to do better things just to a better degree. Well, because we're human being and the nature of fallen humankind means that we're just going to get better at being that middle department and still justifying and excusing. We see it every day. Like you can't throw a fact out without some kind of rationale or justification where how it's not the bad one, it's semi the good one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And principles are easier, but they're also harder. Principles are, when something is right or wrong by saying, option one, stealing. Did you steal? And if you're not allowed to say any words after, is it stealing? Is it taking from someone, right? Mm-hmm. Without their permission or without purchasing it, then it's stealing. And if you have a paragraph after house, well, I was hungry, or they had more than me, or my check was coming next week, or whatever.
It's technically not stealing if.
Right. So in a sophisticated society, we just become better demons, right? Mm-hmm. And it works in other departments too. So let's just say if you have a legal system where you have better lawyers, right? Does more truth come from having better lawyers? Or are we just better at clouding, the vices and the bad things and justifying them into no repercussions? See, that's sort of like better or more sophisticated and intelligent does not necessarily mean more pure. Purity means more pure, more principle, truth, and whatever make it more pure.
Yeah, probably why defense attorneys always have such a bad rap. Everyone's like, oh, defense attorney, you must just clearly get bad guys off all day,
And prosecutors too. I mean, if you think about it, if a prosecutor came into evidence that would go against their case, a principled, good prosecutor would say, well, I'm not going to prosecute this case. They would defend the case that they have and wanting to keep it going down in spite of someone not being guilty in the way that they thought they were guilty. They have an obligation to the job. They're not there to discover truth. They're there to win a case.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
law is not the pursuit of truth. Law is winning and losing. It's just another team sport.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you hear about stuff all the time where the attorney's like, don't tell me if you did it or not. Don't say this. Don't say that. I don't care. I'm just here to do my job. Just answer the questions I do ask you.
There to win. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Could you be a defense attorney if your client admitted to you that they did it? They broke this law. They did whatever.
I would only be able to argue the repercussions, because if you're guilty and the law should apply to people who are guilty, then finding an appropriate punishment would be my only obligation. Trying to get you, when I know you did something, to not get a repercussion, that's not truth in law. It should be, justice is about lining up what you did with what penalties you should have to pay. Mm-hmm. So a defense attorney, if their job is to get the less amount, even if it's an unjust amount, like if you did something, you stole a $1,000 TV from someone, and I would make the argument that let's replace the TV, and then all of the the victim over there, everything that they had to go through from the time that you stole it from them and beyond, and make it equal. So everything they lost because of your actions is gained back by what your punishment would be, and that would be a balance on my spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've even heard, I watch a lot of court TV sometimes, and they say, the court's not there to make you better off than you were. It's just to make you whole. Whatever your loss is, let's even this out then, kind of thing.
Yeah, so in a just society, it would be most math, right? 90% of it would be finding things of equal value. And then the other half would be to figure out what those parameters are. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you kill somebody, should you be killed? Or should you go to prison? Those are the arguments then about what would be a good punishment. So two separate people. These people try to find the value, and then you have other people that are setting what those values are. Like if you had a company that you disagreed with, and let's just say you had a Democrat Congress and executive branch in a company that they didn't like and didn't go along with their stuff, and they took in the crosshairs and they said, I'm going to punish you. Should they be able to sue you for $100 billion that it would end you, using the litigation to end you? Or should they say, what did you really do? What is that value at? And make it equal. So if you did something that was $50,000 in losses from someone, right? But if you can make a punishment be so excessive that just the punishment is way beyond whatever the crime or the victims that you created, then we have a slanted system. And that's why I say, I lose a lot of hope, because no matter where I point, we're not doing principles. We're not doing virtuous things. We're using weapons wherever we can. We're going at each other in very sophisticated ways. But the end result, we're at war with one another.
Yeah. So how do you turn it around?
Listen to me. When I say something and I say don't do it, don't do it.
Just
when I say
listen to Joe.
Just listen to, wear bracelets that say WWJD. Yep. What would Joe do? And then I will help solve all. But there's going to be a point where even if you had the solution, we're too far gone. There's no coming back from it. So the civilization cycle is that we're apathetic. We don't really see this stuff happening. We don't want to hear it. We're bought into our team and whatever. So we're going to get into the bondage, and we're going to get into the, we're going to be slaves to this. And then we're going to say, oh, how did we get here? We're not going to like that we're here. And then we're going to break out of it and destroy things. And the best way I know, if you've got, I actually did this. You got a wooden porch and it's starting to rot, and you've got an infestation of termites, and you have hornets that are everywhere. You got to decide, do I fix the porch, or is it so far gone that I need to rip that shit out and just build a new porch, right?
Yeah.
And so the metaphor there is there's going to be a point where it's not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Man, I'm using cliches and metaphors. I hate
that kind
what
of
I'm
days
doing.
Just getting worse. Now you're speaking in cliches.
So if it's not worth it, if you got to spend more to fix the thing, you got to just say, this thing's totaled. Let's just let it go and rebuild. So there's got to be like one generation that sees that the destruction's on the horizon and start formulating the plan. So when that happens, we can just take the rebuilding plan phase, and once we scrap it, we can just start executing maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll take Civilization 2.0 and I'll say, I know how it's going to be destroyed, and I'll start rebuilding right now in theory, and then we can just put my plan in execution phase.
I mean, how many times do I got to say, when are you running for office?
Never going to a million years. You can't.
Never?
I've done the math on this, and you can be more effective outside the machine than once you go in the machine. If you're really good at arbitrating and, working with people that are wrong and conceding on things that you don't believe in, then you go do that. But I am not beholden to anybody. Nobody's giving me money to feel how I feel about things.
Yeah.
These are just my principles. And I can act and be more effective on the outside of that cluster F that is government than on the inside, for sure.
So, devil's advocate.
Yeah.
What, and I'm sure this is sort of what we've already discussed, but what makes you so sure you are right and others are wrong?
Mine's grounded in math. So when you take the logical steps between what will happen and then how you want to worry about it, I'm objective in I don't want a certain end. My problem-solving brain just knows how to solve it in the end, even if I don't believe in the thing. So let's just say we'll use universal basic income, and I believe in it and I don't believe in it all at the same time, right? So at a certain point, if you are just using taxes and giving it away to people, then that's literally already happening. If you just created universal basic income, it would cut out the gymnastics that happen and just admit the fact that that's where we're already at and make it more even, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we weren't giving money to every person for everything that they would do, and if the money was just going out in one direction, then I could say, okay, before we do this, let's say, should we do it in giveaways where we pick the group that we're giving it to, or we just do it uniform across the board and make $1,000 the old zero? And, so most of these society problems can be formulated with a math extension, but it separates the human from it. It's not it's not an emotional response, it's a mathematical response.
And so you're saying pretty much the emotional response is going to hinder us. You've got to see the mathematics.
Yeah, the middle part, the people in power, right, that are controlling the path that we're going on, are doing a very poor job. And I can admit the virtuous are not strong enough, or there aren't enough of them to override the middle lane, right? So when that's destroyed and you know where we're going with that, then we're going to say, okay, what's the wreckage going to look like? How are we going to deal with it? So you're on a trip and you have a person that has no ability to find any place, very bad at getting to destinations. Okay. And you're not using a GPS, so we're not following a guidance or something that is smarter than them to get you there. So you're sitting in the back seat and you're like playing it out in your mind of what's going to happen. So we're probably going to not even know the exit we're getting there. We're probably going to be heading maybe in the right direction. Maybe we're going to have to go. So I know we're going to end up at the wrong spot. I know we're going to be there long after that we intended to get there. We're probably going to run out of gas. We're going to be hungry at a certain point. There are going to be restroom breaks and no rest stops. All of the things that are going to happen. You're like, so what's going to happen when we get there? Am I just going to defer to those people and suffer along with them? Or am I in the back seat planning? I know they're not going to listen to me because they're in the driver's seat, but my plan is going to protect me first and make sure me, my family, aren't going to suffer along with you. I'm not going to try to convince you because I know you're not going to listen. Now, there's not any evidence I can give you that's going to make you change your mind. You're in your mode, I'm in mine. So I go into prevent defense and you go into offense, and I'm just waiting until you get to the point where you're either going to have to admit that you shouldn't have been driving all along, and then I'm going to be ready to sit in the driver's seat and heap together what devastation you delivered to everybody in that seat. Or I can kind of push on that and push you into that devastation, right? So I want to egg it on so that you fail faster, so that we don't get so deep into your devastation that I'm not going to be able to bring us back from it. Sounds kind of evil, doesn't it?
I'm just thinking what it must be like to live with you and have disagreements.
I think it would be pretty easy.
Yeah?
Yeah, very linear, very logical. So you can almost
Ah.
predict what I'm going to say based on facts, math, and truth.
So do you see any value then in emotion or an emotional response to something?
Creativity. Creativity is the best outlet for emotion. When you buy into something that doesn't exist in this world, drilling all of your emotional energy into creating that thing in spite of the logic and the data that says, hey, that thing doesn't exist. It doesn't even make sense. Most of our innovations and inventions have come from people who believed in something that is immeasurable at that point. The best artwork, the best music, the best movies came from the heads of people that went beyond what they should do. And so that's where emotional is best spent.
Oh yeah, I mean you see that tactic everywhere. Like I had mentioned advertising. How many times in advertising are they just trying to appeal to an emotion and a feeling,
Right.
get you to feel a certain way? I feel like we always come back to this election year, but for sure this is emotionally driven. I mean, if you look at the two, what's the word I want? If you look at the tactics both sides are using, and you don't see the emotions they're trying to invoke from presenting to people in a certain way, in a certain light, and the things they do and say,
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, they are 100% making this about trying to get you to like one person and hate the other, regardless of anything else. Don't look at any other policy, statistics, nothing. Who do you like and who do you hate as a person?
It's effective, though.
Yeah.
I can get... And this is what drives me absolute crazy, because the math behind politics is so disappointing. Like, I know that I can control a third of the population with something, regardless if it's true or not. And even if it's not true, right, it doesn't even matter because I elicited the response and now it's ingrained in their head.
Yeah.
Have a political talk with someone who really doesn't follow politics. And what do you get for all of their inputs? It's things that were relayed to them. They don't care enough to be able to find out if it's true. It was enough for them to say, well, since I don't care about this anyway, this one I'm putting on the shelf because somebody I trust or whatever told me to feel this way. And so a third of the people that are governed completely by an ignorant, emotional response to information.
I just saw a video the other day. Now, the source is Dr. Phil, so take that as you will. But he was talking about, too, even this whole political debate and this climate we're in right now, and was saying statistics have shown, whoever studied this and gathered the statistics, that even if you are serving someone facts, actual researched, proven facts about something, if it goes against what they want to believe and where they already are in their opinions and beliefs, it will actually sway them to dive deeper into what they are already wanting to believe if you give them facts.
Yeah,
like to the
100%.
contrary. It's like, okay, so you think this, but here's a whole laundry list of things as to why you're wrong, and this is proof that you are wrong, and all they will do is dig their heels in more and want to go more into what they believe. And I'm like, that's insane. How childish are we that we have now become so used to just wanting to be, like, I call it right fighters, that's his term too, instead of saying, oh, wow, I did not know that. I hadn't considered that. Let me look at it this way. Let me start considering other things.
That's important. Like, that objectivity, when you don't have a decision already made and you're curious to see if the new information enters into it and how you want to decide, right? Mm-hmm. And mostly we have curiosity in that department. But when we're playing these team politics where it's immense amount of tribalism, you're trying to, if somebody throws information out there, you want to destroy that information. You're not curious about where it enters in.
Yeah.
It's an evil that you need to get rid of.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, now you're going to just start fighting those and trying to find reasons to justify why you shouldn't listen to those facts or anything, instead of just swallowing the pride for a minute and consider the fact that you may have missed something, that something isn't what you thought it was, and just like get over the ego to consider that. I think is so hard for people, impossible for some.
But part of the logic in problem solving is if you have a responsibility, let's just say you're good at one thing and I'm good at the other. We can both objectively decide when a situation or a problem hits us, who should be dealing with that problem, who's the best natured to be able to make that. I don't think many or most humans actually, should be making any decisions that are important. They need to have people and things that help them decide things that will not be detrimental to themselves or other people. And so that lack of objectivity, you don't want a person like that ever solving a problem with you. If they decide, like, and some of it's selfish reasons, and when we get off of virtue and we go all vice, it's self-serving. So you're looking out for your interests. So if you want to go to an amusement park, right, and I want to go to I don't know a museum, right, amusement park versus museum, you're interested in the where we should go having an end already defined. Right? So you're going to argue for the amusement park, and when what we should do is sit down and say, which one is best right now, right? Which can we afford? Which one's closer? Like, take all the considerations in deciding, and not having where we decide built into your defenses. So if our goal is to come to a conclusion that's objective, it might be either one, and I'm okay with either one. Let's figure out which is best for the right now. But you can't trust the other people that you're disagreeing with or having a conversation with can objectively come to a different conclusion than when you decided to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So especially like if you're a scientist, right? And if you come to one conclusion, you're going to make $1 million. And if you come to another conclusion, you're going to make $0, and you're still going to have to, get all of your money from research paper publications. So now when you're devising what conclusion you come to, how many people would you trust to come to the conclusion that might be accurate, but you don't get any money from, versus the one where it's going to be a payday? And and it's not just money. It could be power. It could be, relation. It could be all kinds of different reasons. But how many principled people would thwart their own interests for the greater good?
Oh, yeah. People. I mean, again, this is another subject I feel like we somehow always end up on. But when it comes to things like our health and our food right now, and the way that things are presented to us, we're fed all this information about things that are perceived as healthy that are not, because businesses can make so much money on that. Now, are they ever going to say, hey, look, we actually advertised this product and we really pushed it out there and we said it was healthy, and then we realized, it's really not good for you. You should probably not eat that, and we're going to get rid of the product. Hell no, that's never going to happen.
Well, is business responsibility to not just give you what you're after? Should they be an arbiter of things that are good for you? Who's the pressure, right? That should help you make better decisions. It comes down to you. Like, you are the main arbiter.
I mean, for sure, I think you are the main arbiter. You should make your healthy decisions. I would like to see more transparency, and so what would you
if you, because companies are just made up of human beings.
Yeah.
If personally we can forego personal enrichment for the sake of their greater good, if we're making those kind of decisions in our daily lives, then I would say, sure, that's so ingrained in our culture and civilization that it would be easy to see that someone in a company would feel those same principles as well. But if you and I aren't following those, why do we expect a company who's built of people just like you and I to do the opposite of what we would do? It makes no logical sense.
Kind of like, I want you all to have morals and do the right thing and be transparent, but am I going to be all the time?
No, not at all. So the scientist who writes the research paper that gets the $1 million, you're going to be mad at him because you didn't benefit from it. Yeah. You were hurt by it. You were a victim of that person wanting more, right? By just telling a little bit of a slanted truth, right?
Yeah.
Marketing does that. Politics does that. Everything does it because the truth is simple, right? We are fallible. And we need things to stop us from acting in our impulses. Our instincts are always going to tell us what we want rather than what we should have. Always, and it's always going to get us in trouble. And that's the premise of every good religion, is to keep people skewing on the side of, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of what I want for what I should have.
We need something to save us from ourselves.
What would Joe do? That's what we need.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm getting a bracelet.
If you do it, I will mass produce those suckers.
I mean, we already have WWJD bracelets. Just write OE next to it.
Is this blasphemous? I think it is.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, how much flack are we going to get? Like, blasphemy, what are you doing?
The more flack, the better.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is sort of a good segue. So if you saw everyone that you knew behaving badly and benefiting from it, how long could you hold out before you decided to start behaving badly? So you go to a party, you shouldn't eat something, right? Everybody else is
Yeah.
eating it. How long could you be the fuddy-dud in the group that's not doing the thing when everybody's doing it? You're on the freeway, and the speed limit's 70, but everybody's going 80. And so you're the oddball, the only one following the rules. How long can you stay in the slow lane when you're watching everybody fly by you, no repercussions whatsoever?
Yeah. Part of me wants to say, oh, I could go pretty long. I'm going to do the right thing. But I feel like I have seen in minor situations in my life that is probably not true. If you're inundated, everybody's doing this to the point where you're actually now experiencing friction because you're not doing it. That makes it a lot easier to try to just conform.
So self-interested people set it up so that the advantages are given to the people who are not following the rules, creating more people. This is the formula for bondage. Like, I don't know if you've ever studied that cycle. Have you ever seen it before? Have I ever showed you that chart?
Bondage? Have I studied bondage?
Yes. Have you?
Maybe not the way you're meaning it.
Well, I would show you, but as soon as I type bondage into Google, all of my ads are going to freaking change.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have some explaining to do about why. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that'll be interesting.
But anyway, so the cycle is that the math starts skewing towards, we'll use welfare for the example. So welfare, everybody feels good that there's some people that are at the bottom rung that need some help, and everybody agrees they put tax money in to help the people who can't take care of themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And then every year there becomes more people who can't take care of themselves. Eventually, everybody can't take care of themselves. And so while we watch this math happen, right, we caused the problem by trying to be helpful, but then created everybody who was in that group, right? Mm-hmm. And so we went apathetic. That's when we stopped putting, complicated intelligence into a problem, and somebody didn't pipe up and say, hey, you know what? You get 1 or 2 spam messages. What happens when we get 1 million spam messages a day? Are you going to want to use email when we're getting all spam? What if too many of the things that the problems start happening? Is it going to make the whole reason why this was a useful thing now not so useful? And when you're contemplating and saying, yeah, that's still a potential, so let's start working on the potential of overrunning a good system so it doesn't get polluted and killed by the bad parts of that good system. So we end up apathy, don't care about it, push it off to the next generation. And then bondage is now you don't have any choice. You have to give into the system when 99% of the people are on welfare and there's 3 guys working to fill the whole welfare roles. Then those guys are going to be like, well, I'm going to go there too. Then the freedoms that you had to be the helper rather than the helpee, now welfare is not a thing. It just becomes the status quo. Now everybody's like, I don't have everything I want. Like, this is a terrible situation. How do we get ourselves here? And that's when they break out of the bondage thing. But you multiply that, good and evil, finances, whatever. And if you're not putting pressures on the thing that you don't want to happen, it is almost 100% certain that bad thing will keep growing until it's so big that you have no choice but to join it. And then once everybody's doing it, you're going to hate the fact that everybody's dying from those car accidents because everybody's speeding. Now it's so bad that everybody breaks out of it and has some kind of revival out of it.
Yeah.
That's my prediction for how our civilization will both end and then be reborn. We have to hit the bottom of the barrel before we make enough good choices to come out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in situations where, we talked about Russian places. If you're trying to get to work and you are just stressed, trying to get out of the house, trying to get there in time, losing your mind to get there, and nobody else did that. Nobody else cared. Everybody else was late. It gets to the point where I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Exactly.
I'm not going to be stressed. I'll get there when I get there. Everybody else does. Why am I giving myself a heart attack over this? Nobody else cares. Nobody's noticing. All right. Get there when I get there. And then everybody is, and now everything goes to shit.
So in the Matrix, there was actually an architect, a guy behind the monitor that had the plan, knew what was going to go down, and had the tools to be able to manipulate things until they went the right way, the math person. We refer to they a whole lot when we talk about these things, the people that are pulling the strings. So do you feel like there is an architect that is letting this go to shit? Or do you think that all of this is happenstance where we think that there's somebody, but this is just the evolution of a species that leads towards a destruction that's inevitable.
So just the evolution or somebody that's sort of behind all of this.
Yes. Pulling the strings. We think that there's a controller out there, but this is just all coincidence.
I almost sort of feel like it's a combination. Part of me really thinks a lot of it is just us evolving and doing stuff to ourselves. Part of me thinks maybe there's something else trying to intervene, but not so much that we can't affect change. I don't know. Why? What do you think it is?
I think that this is not our first go around as a species. I think that we've done it. We've evolved. We get to
As
a point,
humans.
As humans, we destroy ourselves or get destroyed by something else. And like Elon Musk has taken us to Mars. There's been a civilization of us that took us to another planet. Every once in a while, they come down and check to see how the human species try to relay some information about when they were once here on this earth and they did something wrong or whatever. We don't listen to it, and so it just cycle continues over and over again.
Like we're a living experiment.
Natural experiment of watching the human beings go through the same cycles of building and being destroyed and building and being destroyed.
And so you think is it only the humans doing the destroying? You know, like you hear things, I was at a planetarium one time, and they were talking about our Earth and how the years are numbered. There are so many years until this planet is done. It will be done.
Yeah.
Regardless of what we do, it's numbered. So that's something else affecting us, affecting the change.
Totally natural. So you get swallowed into your sun, or you get a meteor that hits, or you get something that happens. But as you can see, we're at a level where we become interplanetary, and then so we start traveling away from this planet. It's almost like if you had a hornet's nest, right? And a couple of those hornets that were capable of creating new hornet's nests went somewhere else for a little bit. There was only a couple of them. But then you noticed the hornet's nest and you took it out with the pressure washer and got rid of it, right? That pressure was... But there were some hornets that were not in that hornet's nest when you destroyed it. Right? So there's a chance that they go somewhere else and create a hornet's nest on, some other property. And then maybe some of them wander back and create a new hornet's nest. So it's very likely that this was just a carrier of human beings. It might not be the origin of human beings. We've just been here at a certain point. We might also be in other places as one of those hornets that just keep moving from place to place. If it's possible to go to other planets, then an iteration of us before have probably done so, and could probably come back or might not even know that, like the hornets that made the new nest, right? They might be third generation and they don't remember it ever being a planet that the hornets were from. They might build a hornet's nest there sometime in the future and never know that their generations before them have already been there.
Other planets, other solar systems, other dimensions.
If we go to Mars and we make a civilization, it means that once we're at Mars, we can recreate... here's a good question. If we do go to Mars, right?
Uh-huh.
And we got a handful of scientists, but then we're like, hey, let's bring a population here, right?
Yeah.
We have a chance to just start over. Take everything that we disliked about Earth, and we do not have to bring it there when we go, when we're there. So... crime, how do we make it so there's no crime here? And does Mars just become another Earth with every single problem, now another 2,000 years or a couple hundred years away from the same destructive pattern on Mars? And then somebody there's like, hey, we freaking killed another one. Let's go to another planet. And we just keep reaching out like those hornets.
I feel like we would. I feel like it would eventually. Because one... to even make it go a while without friction, you'd have to have a lot of really like-minded people. Because if you got different people with different beliefs and different backgrounds and different views, you're going to have friction there from the get-go.
So would you be selective and not pick people of different views and make it a complete homogenous? Like the differences make us strong, but the differences kill us.
But that's another thing. Yeah, if everybody is the same and everybody is thinking the same... you can sort of get in a rut that may not be good. If someone's not seeing things from a different angle like somebody else would, how do you even advance? You know, it's almost like then you become stagnant and you don't really grow.
Yeah, if you take a population, we'll say like the Nordic states are very homogenous in ethnicity and how they're governed and whatever. So they would be a good sample to say when you get a lot of the same kind of people, snapshot what life is like in a homogenous society where your neighbors have your same principles, they serve the same religion, same economic status, they're cool with all the rules and whatever, and take a bunch of different people and drop them in there and see what happens. See if there's rejection as a foreign species coming in and ruining it because they don't follow the same religion, they don't follow the same, economic principles or, ethical principles or whatnot. What happens? And is that making the Nordic states stronger by introducing things that are different, or is it making it weaker because now the things that were working okay are different, but are they better? And are those things measurable?
Yeah.
It'd be the same thing on Mars. And I think, if there's all scientists up there and they're all working on a thing, how to make it habitable and how to do geology and how to build infrastructure and whatever, they'd be pretty homogenous of who would be there. They'd all have that goal. But once you start bringing the regular population there, you've introduced somebody who's different than the scientists. And now the breakdown has begun when you introduce new things.
Yeah.
But there's got to be power that can be harnessed in bringing those different things if they're controlled in a way that makes them similar enough so that they can work together. And then if we learn that what worked on Mars, could we then take those same principles and institute it back on Earth and fix those problems?
Like politics. Could you take people that have differences and different views and make them work together? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. In a room full of 10 people on Mars, you could probably get it done. On a planet with billions of people, probably not going to get that done.
Yeah. Hence why we're in the situation we're in.
And that's why I say we take 50% of the lowest providers and take all of the decision-making and problem-solving away. And you get closer to the scientists who have the ability to do mathematics and higher thought and whatnot. So maybe it's the lack of intelligence. Maybe it's the lack of virtue. Again, cool topic. Not an answer to this one. Only the thought experiment about if we had a chance and we knew the math that goes into making a good society and bad society, we eliminate all the bad stuff in one foul swoop, make it so that it's not even possible, and will we do it on Mars once we do have that chance?
I'm guessing you're like on the first ship there, huh?
First ship. I want to get to Mars while it's still good. It'll be pure.
Before anybody wrecks it.
Before regular people wreck it.
Oh gosh.
Now, and this kind of conversation makes me hopeful that we are just in a simulation. It's so hopeful that this was
Somebody
just all a ruse.
Unplug it and plug it back in.
So this was all a ruse, and like I was really in the pod. I was the lower 50% that I put myself in a pod, and I'm like, oh, the ignorance was awesome. Put me back in there, hit the reset button, take me back to 1976, and now I know a little bit more, and take me through the ruse again. Would you choose the ruse, or would you choose the reality? Would you take the red pill or blue pill?
Sort of like live blissfully unaware,
yes,
or know the truth even if you don't like it.
Oh, you're not going to like it. The truth is not going to be good as it ever is.
I don't know. I sort of want to be blissfully unaware. That'd be rough.
Yeah. I'd want the truth, but that's a bad decision, but I'd still want it.
Now, what if, though, I've heard people talk about similar concepts that, this is just one sort of playing field. This isn't it. I've heard people that say they've talked about near-death experiences, or even like people that claim to be psychic mediums that talk to people on these other planes and things like that. And they sort of describe it as exactly that. It's almost like you wake up or you come to and you realize that was real all along and this was not. We were sort of here just experiencing things. But that was it. You don't get to come back one time. Do you want to be done and find that out? Or do you want to be like, well, if this is it, I need to be here as long as possible? Or would you want to come back? Or would you say, no, I'm good?
So I believe that we're in a simulation, but we're in a nested simulation. So when I get to the real world, I want to dig again and see if we're in a simulation in that simulation. Because if we can create one, then every time we invent ourselves in a new simulation, we're going to create another simulation to put ourselves in. right? If that's the end, if that's the, where we evolve into is part of the machine that creates a simulation, then there was an original simulation. There might be a real person, but you might have to dig an infinite amount of time to get out to the real you somewhere, and it might not even resemble a human being. Human beings might have been concocted for the simulation, right?
Yeah.
And inside that one, a new one was created, a new one was created. So you got to go outward in our metamorphosis and then very much inward in our metamorphosis as possibility.
Because don't you then go back into another simulation, but you don't know it once you're in there?
Yeah.
That's just your reality. That's all you know. You
and
don't
that
know
could be a simulation as well.
So you would just kind of see what happens. It's not like you can affect change or learn something from your previous simulation and take it with you to the next if you don't know, right? Or do you think sort of innately you would make changes?
Well, I think it would occur to you because let's just say you put on your VR goggles and you're in a game. You didn't know what was happening because you were in the game. So there's things happening around you that you just weren't aware of, right? And so when you take the goggles off and you sit on the couch, now real has been represented to you, right? But you know you're in real. I'm suggesting that you have goggles on, you take them off, and you have another set of goggles on, right?
Yeah.
And so what the goggles you were in before was your real, but you can take those goggles off too. And in every iteration, you have a new set of goggles until you get down to one where you're not wearing any goggles. And when you get there, it might not even be you or a human being or whatever.
So again, quantum leaping.
Quantum leaping. Yeah. And is the pursuit worth it? Is it, if it takes, an entire lifetime to dig down to one simulation, you wouldn't be alive long enough. Or maybe you would. Maybe death isn't even a thing. It's just booting into a new generation of the simulation. But there's another and another and another.
Just infinite.
Infinite simulations. So it might not none of this was real. I was pissed off today.
For no reason.
And
you could have had a great day.
It was just a game. Like I could have just taken the freaking goggles off and gotten to my real self.
And if you think about that, if you think no reason, was just pissed off for no reason, then why don't you be like, well, if I'm here, then let's just make it pleasant. Why focus on...
What if I wanted to be pissed off? What if I haven't been pissed off in a while and my allotment of piss-offness needed to come out and be realized? And you have to get that out or else, causes...
you got to purge it.
I got to purge. Yeah,
purge
exactly.
it. You're like, you know what? I haven't felt enraged in a while. Here's a good reason. Just going to go with it.
Well, that was one thing in my marriage, like arguments we were talking about earlier. We don't really have arguments because everything is distilled through like problem solving. So when you have a problem, we say it right away and then we find a solution and we objectively put the solution in action. So there's no real blow-ups. So every once in a while, I'll be like, it's been a while since we like fought about any contention. So let's have one real quick. And we'll try to draw out something so subtle and stupid. But if there's anything been grating on you, throw it out there. We'll fake mock argue about it to get it out of our system. And then we'll laugh about it on the other side.
But it's not, it wouldn't be a fake mock argument. You just said, think about something that you actually have as a bit of contention. And
think of all the
bugging
useful
you.
things. We just say them when they happen. We don't bottle them inside. We just get them out when they're happening. So the things we have to dig for are usually so freaking stupid that we can laugh about them because they're so mundane that it obviously, we have a good threshold for what should be said and then what's not a big enough deal. I'll just deal with it. Like, I don't like your shoe right there. It's so stupid. That's like, all right, well, I'll put it somewhere else then. And then we laugh about it. Well, we drum it up so that we get that emotional energy out when we need to.
But I feel like you definitely still have to have two parties in that are willing to sort of think that way.
Right. What
What happens if you're like, hey, I'm really ticked off. I'm annoyed by something. Now I'm bringing it up. And the other person's like, I don't do that. No, I don't. Well, that's stupid. Well, why are you mad? And then you're like, wait a minute. This isn't working right.
See, and that's where intelligence comes because before you do something, you create the rule set. So when you get into a relationship, you set the freaking rule set that governs what you want to happen and what you don't want to happen.
Yeah.
It's almost like the tire analogy. We buy the car. It comes with tires that need to be replaced sometime in the future. And if you decide how you're going to handle that from before you buy the car, then you just follow your own rules and you just don't have to do anything except for do what you wrote down. You don't need invention energy or creative energy to decide tires, right?
Yeah.
But we use so much emotional energy in relationships that we decide that we weren't going to decide, right? And then we let things bother us and we don't say anything. And then we bottle it up till it's a volcano. We don't release it until it's time. And ever watch like when Hollywood portrays two couples going to a counselor and they don't say this shit regularly, but when they have a third party and they just unload on each other.
Yeah.
Right? That's the cork that gets pulled out. And then you just say all the shit that you should have been saying from the very beginning of the relationship.
See, but what if, kind of like you said,
here comes the what ifs. Okay, let's do some justification.
It's still sort of, and I definitely see your point. I mean, we talked the one day about like premarital counseling and discussing absolutely everything, so you're not blindsided by something that they see differently when you're in it, and now you're like, oh dang, we're different. But like you said, you see the couples in the movies on the couches. A lot of times, though, you see those people have been saying the things, and it's going nowhere. They're like, I have been telling you that I don't know, drives me crazy when you leave your clothes on the floor or whatever. I say it every day and you refuse to do anything and all you do is call me a nag, and I think that's like where, what if you have the contention where because there are two different people, they don't see things the same way? Or what if you went ahead, you did all the pre-discussions, you did all the here's what we're going to do and we're going to lay it out and we both agree, and then you get in it and somebody changes. I feel like with humans, there are other variables that go into things.
Brokenness. Like, I mean, shit happens even when in the car analogy where other things are going to happen. But the thing is, there's sort of like a tree of contingencies, right? And you don't have to pick one contingency and then get all bought into that. Like if I wanted to escape my house during a fire, I'd be like, here's a window and I'm going to throw the ladder out and I'm going to get down. Good, fire thing done. And then I come along and say, what if the fire starts right there at your window? And you're like, right?
Yeah.
There's more contingencies. And before you get in the relationship, before you buy the house, have that talked about. There's going to be a point where I'm going to get to a level where I just want to be mad and I'm going to disagree with you and not do something because I'm mad. And you're like, okay, let's plan for the contingency. When you get there, how are we going to deal with it? If you're going to get disruptive or you're going to get, just angry, I want to be pissed off today, right? How are we going to handle that? And you can keep following the contingencies so you have an agreement before the relationship starts, so that you don't have to wait till after it and be super surprised then fallible humans do things that all of the other humans have been doing since the beginning of time. You could talk about those ones too.
You're a big planner, aren't you, Joe?
Big planner. And I'm also not so desperate that I will forego the rule set just to do the thing. If it's not right and I can't come to a conclusion where I can't decide on the tires, I don't have to go get the car and just think I'll figure it out later. These are the things that don't matter in life, and they're easily put on autopilot if you just decide the principles of how you're going to decide things, store up your creative energy for things that are new and that actually matter.
So have you ever kind of gone off the rails?
Oh yeah,
with an argument where you're like, I know we had these contingencies in place, but screw them.
We have structured it so that when we go off the rails, it ends up being about 10% of the time instead of 90% of the time, and it's manageable when you go off those rails of how you're going to deal with them and how quickly you can bring yourself back to center because you have 10% of you working against you instead of 90% working against you. You've just given yourself greater odds. Again, none of this stuff's absolute. It does not mean that you're not going to have an argument. I'm going to have an argument with my wife within the next 5 years. I guarantee there's going to be a legitimate one that none of my contingencies, we're able to stifle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It doesn't mean that I don't do it because 90% of the time it saves the relationship and everything else that goes along with it. So absolute 100%, not possible, but 90% real possible.
Yeah, and you can kind of, like you said, do those things that are sort of planning ahead. I have a friend of mine, she and I were just talking recently about marriage counseling and how a lot of people will go to marriage counseling when there's a problem. But it's like, well, how many people will go when there is no problem?
Exactly.
Everything's hunky-dory. Let's go touch base anyways. Let's go do a marriage retreat or a getaway, even though We don't need to reconnect. Everything's fine.
Everybody
Do
gets
it anyways.
everybody gets an alarm system for their house after they've been burglarized. Everybody seeks something that after the bad thing has happened. That's the way human beings, why I say we're so destructive, because we are taught by reactive experiences instead of proactive planning. And there's no math in reactive experiences. Sometimes it's going to be perfectly aligned and you're going to be okay from it. Sometimes it's going to be it's going to decimate your world and you're going to be a victim. Like, how could I have planned that? I'm going to sit back and say, you could have come talk to me first, and then we would have talked through it. But if your impulses wanted you to buy the car before you knew if you could do the tires, well, that's not you really not wanting to look at the truth and the data that came along with that. I do want to come look at the truth and data.
So are you pro or anti things like prenuptial agreements?
Oh, yeah.
Prenups.
Absolutely.
You're pro?
Pro, yeah.
Okay. So what do you say to the naysayers that are like, oh, well, then you're just banking on your marriage to fail. You're setting yourself up for failure. You're giving yourself an out instead of going all in and knowing there is no out.
I'm telling you, it's just one of those pressures, right?
Yeah.
That it keeps things measurable and honest. And there's some people who would never, it would actually be a bad thing in their world, but it would keep some in the middle that would be a pressure that would keep them on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. I've known couples where, they were getting engaged or something and one person wanted one and the other is like insulted. Why would you even ask? You don't trust me?
No,
you're already
the
putting it up
world
to
is
fail?
not trust. Those things, like you want to pretend like you have full trust, but you don't. It's not real. It's an illusion. Right?
Yeah.
The just thing means I could take a sheet of me and you, where I was at, where you're at, and I want to make sure that it's just. If I garbage something up, you're put back to where you were before. And there could be professionals to be able to measure it and find out what the just result would be. Mm-hmm. And a prenuptial wouldn't be anything other than documenting snapshotting where you were at before you got in there so we can make you whole if something should happen.
Yeah.
It's just math.
I mean, some people that think I'm weird. when we got married, I kept my own bank accounts in my own name. He had his in his name. We do have a couple of joint ones, but I said right off the bat, I was like, when I was younger, before I was ever married or engaged, I heard so many stories of women that went all in and their husband was the main controller of the finances and they didn't deal with anything as far as their finances go or bills. And one day when the husband's like, you know what, this isn't working out, I don't want to be married anymore, they're screwed. The women are totally screwed. They have no money. They have nowhere to go. They're completely vulnerable. And I just said, I'm never going to do that. I will never do that to myself. I don't think you would ever screw me over. I don't think this will end. But you know what? I'm going to keep my money and you can't touch it just in case.
Well, that's a healthy contingency. And you should also do the other side where you should put accounts together that things that you're not entitled to, that if you decide you're not going to do it, the things you're going to give back to them to make them whole for you taking more than you gave. So if you contingency plan, if the goal of a prenuptial is to equalize all things, if it just doesn't work out, you got to do both sides of that equation.
Have you ever, be honest,
Yes.
This might sound weird, but I've done it, I'll admit it.
You're blushing. This is going to be good, I can tell.
It's just so bad and it's so wrong. But out of sheer curiosity, do you ever just think like, okay, what if we broke up, now single again? Sometimes I'll even look around my house and I'd be like, well, that would be mine and that's mine and that's coming with me. And then we've even been on a walk before in neighborhoods and I'd be like, I'd have a little house like that where I could live there and you go live over there maybe and that'll be mine. And like, do you ever think like,
very healthy,
how would I make it look if all of a sudden we were done?
Very,
and it was just me?
That is very healthy because remember what you're doing is we're taking and pressuring yourself to contribute, right?
Yeah.
And if you concoct a scenario that's better than the one that you're in, the value of you not being in the relationship goes up. Now, if the sellability, if you're like, I would never want to get rid of this relationship because then I'd have to do those things, and you're like, more value added to the relationship that you built.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a downgrade. I'd be like, well, that would be nice. Not nice like what I have now, but I could do that and I could do that. And it's okay. Yeah. I'm glad that's not a bad thing.
all of these things have to kind of be put together because if you cherry pick and just do that one, then it's just selfish. You're saying, how you're going to take yourself out of the equation and you're going to prosper differently than when you're in. And then if I were sitting as a counselor and saying, so you think that life you're more prosperous, let's do a pluses and minus. What's the pros and what you would lose and what would you gain? And let's add the two up. And is it a good, worthwhile trade? And then you look at the stuff that you gain and then you start taking a new account for things that you might have taken for granted and saying, well, I get this, this, and this. If you can be objective, like it's a great pursuit if you can be honest and objective to really then revalue. And the stuff that you concede and saying maybe you bought the refrigerator because he liked it, but you get like 5,000 awesome things because you conceded on the refrigerator. So it's not all that bad of a concession at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very healthy. Now, if your relationship sucks, then this is the worst thing that you can do because this is immediately going to end it and give you reasons not to be.
Yeah, you can be like, why am I even here? I could do this.
How many relationships do you think are not good and would fail this test in a freaking heartbeat? A majority of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of superficial people, lots of people not planning, lots of people that are just in a coincidence relationship rather than something that's formulated and has structure.
Oh, this friend of mine, it was funny. I actually got in a conversation with her and her husband at the time, and we were talking about something similar. And he was saying that what makes him happy as a husband is he's like, or what makes him a good husband is he's like, well, I provide, I bring in money, I help stock groceries, I do this, I take care of my kids, I do whatever. That makes a good husband. And I said, you realize she was doing all that already before you got here. Mm-hmm. Like she can buy her own food, she can take care of the house, she had everything before you got here. So again, explain to me what value you are bringing. It's got to be more than that.
And immediately, if I heard those words from you, that would sting, and I'd be like, oh, okay. And I would have a conversation and say, I want to add more value. I feel like, I'm putting stuff in that you don't even value all that much because you could do them on your own. But I got to bring something in this relationship to the table that's valuable. What can I do more for you?
Yeah.
In a giving, virtuous society, we are looking to give more than we get. So that even if it didn't occur to me, the minute that somebody told me that I was the freeloader and I was the taker in this, I'd immediately want to settle that score and make the balance out a little bit.
That's where things like love languages come into play.
That's right.
What's your partner's love language? Well, why? Because they can already do what you're doing. Yeah. Why do I need
if
you?
If it's transactional and it's just like that situation, it's already doomed from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, we don't know anything about our bodies. We don't know anything about our minds. We don't know anything about relationships. We're getting it wrong almost more than we're getting it right. And so there has to be some smart people out there that have figured this out. They should dedicate that university to studying human beings, right? And their goals should be implementing the reality of what makes human beings better in relationships, better with money, better with their health, better with their mind, instead of what we have now, which is a bastardized version of sorting through the symptoms after something's been destroyed, instead of teaching people how to do this from the beginning, right? So, for instance, one of the policies that Trump has thrown out there many times that gets me most excited, probably second thing that gets me most excited, is the scrapping of the Department of Education. I would love to see the day where the Department of Education is set on freaking fire. Set on fire. Gone. Okay? And it's not because I hate education. It's not because I don't want people to learn. Because you hate kids. Right? But the structure of what we teach needs new innovations. If you look at what we were teaching over the years, like some of the details get different, but the innovation, the strategies, like they leave a lot to be desired in how they treat every individual exactly the same, not depending on how people are best to learn. The things they teach, like how to use your brain. I mean, think about how when you were growing up, when did they first teach you about money? Not at all, right? How to balance a checkbook and how to do investments.
I mean, other than like counting money and like
but not how to do stuff with it.
Yeah,
not really sophisticated things. So they're keeping kids and people dumb because what they're choosing to teach people. And I think that there's some people that do not want to be taught and are not good candidates for being taught.
Yeah,
to be wasted money to try to teach someone who's not interested and doesn't have the capacity for it.
I had a class in high school. It was called Life Skills. It was basically a version of what used to be home ec. And it had some similarities as far as trying to learn how to cook something. There was a brief period of trying to sew. I say brief period because, wow, did that go badly for me. But it was called Life Skills. And you know what our big end of the year project was that you learned about, that you researched, that you planned, and you executed?
What?
A wedding. A wedding. What do the flowers symbolize? Why do they do these certain things? What do these traditions mean or symbolize? And then at the end, you pick a bride, you pick a groom, you pick someone who's the attendants, and you go to the auditorium and you have a mock wedding that you learned how to plan and execute. What does that do for you? Like,
I can only think of 1,000 other life skills that are
Yep.
more important than that one.
maybe what happens after the wedding? Maybe how do you have a marriage? Maybe what are things you consider? And they did say too, disclaimer, we were taught during this that don't think things stay the same after a wedding, that it's a piece of paper and people can still have emotions and things come into play. They did touch on that. But that was the big project, is plan a wedding.
Okay.
And I was like,
So who
hindsight.
formulates? If you take all the curriculum and you just go one at a time, not just what are you teaching, but why are you teaching it? What's the end of teaching this thing? If you come up with any kind of emotional response for how I want you to feel or what I want you to know, not what you're going to actually do with it. Like the fundamentals are how to use this meat suit, right, in the
Yeah.
best way possible. How to keep your impulses under control, how your brain functions, what you should be eating. All of that stuff is the primer for everything else. If you have kids that are unhealthy, broken down spiritually, broken down emotionally, and you're like, here's some math facts, right?
Yeah.
Come on. That's not a good formula for having a sophisticated, intelligent society. That's a bunch of broken people that have things they memorize rolling around in their brain. Nobody's
Yeah.
functional, can't do anything.
Yep.
Drives me crazy.
I know. I'm seeing more and more as an adult how much school was just memorizing.
That's it.
Just memorizing like facts, memorizing things, not a whole lot of implementing ideas or free thinking or, I guess, seeing the connection maybe as to where this is going when you're older. And yeah.
But I would take every piece of everything that teachers are teaching and upgrade them. And by just eliminating the things that don't have a practical use and where, and if it connects to other things, then I say scrap those connecting things too. Get down to brass tacks. Me and the cliches today. Oh my goodness. Get down to the fundamentals of how to control yourself. Like know enough about what's going on here to control yourself to the point where you can make use of this tool. And if
Yeah.
we dumb it down to the point where all education does in the public setting, I'm sure there's some schools that, try different things and have innovated out of this, but it's basically taking your least common denominator and making them just not stupid enough to be destructive. Like filling an empty gas can with a thimble of gas so that you have something rather than nothing. What it
Yeah.
does, I don't know. I don't know what function it has, but it's a fool's errand because we're putting resources into things that have no practical exercise after you've put the resource into it.
So would you be big on, regardless of the subject, you could, I feel like, insert this in so many different things, but testing, written tests. Pro-written tests in any way, or is it just, hey, we need to go ahead and
Well, that's part of the
implement
innovations
something?
where the smart people can figure out how to draw information out of people that maybe certain people communicate a lot of their intelligence through a written test. And so if you're that kind of a person, then a written test is perfect for you. But if there's imaginative creative and their intelligence is done this way, then you craft because it's gathering information about a person. So there's no uniform thing that every human being, because we're just so different in what we do and what our skill sets. But if we cram everybody in that homogenous box, like we used about the Nordic countries, you have less problems because now everything's the same, but we lose all of the strengths where how people are different. So it's the exact same explanation about how we take advantage of the differences in people and minimize the destructive things that are created when there's differences in people, but use homogeneity. Is that a word? Homogeneousness?
It is now.
Homogeneity. But anyway, use that for its, if you had a whole neighborhood of people that just believe the same that everybody else in the neighborhood, and there was all upside and no downside, you would do that thing, and you wouldn't let somebody caring about you doing that, you wouldn't let that enter into the decision making, right? It works. It's mathematically measurable why that's a better thing. And then if you have other things where there are downsides, then you measure those things and you don't do those things. No emotional attachment with what measurements you come up with or what end you want to have. And that's, as I say, like we came out with some principles: truth, objectivity, some things that are measurable, and keep logical thought in all of these departments. When it's principle, keep logical thought. And creative and innovation, the entropy that's needed in forward, pushing civilization forward, imaginative and creative, and know your lanes, right?
Yeah.
If I'm better at buying things, you would send me to the grocery store. You wouldn't say, because now you feel bad that you're not going to the grocery store, that somehow putting the best person in the spot is somehow logically deficient, when it's not. It's emotionally deficient because now you feel bad because you weren't picked to go grocery shopping.
Yeah. And I've seen where two people, one very logical and one very emotional, get together and things that can. So I guess discuss that beforehand.
Plan everything.
Know what you're getting into.
Yeah. This is a good talk. I think we went, an hour and some minutes?
Oh my gosh. It just flies by.